If you've turned on a TV in the past 30 plus years, you've seen at least half a dozen sitcoms written and created by my next guest. You don't need to be a Pulitzer Prize winning physicist to figure out who that is. He's next on Brio TV, the podcast. Hi there, I'm your host, Bill Brio, and thank you for joining me. Are you sitting in your favorite spot on your favorite couch? Well, get comfortable because this conversation is one I've had on my bucket list since I started podcasting over 5 years ago. Today's guest had a humble start in the music business, touring America as a guitarist and songwriter. One of his songs, French Kissin', was recorded by Deborah Harry. Frustrated that the other 400 songs he wrote were not hits, he turned to writing for television, starting with children's animated shows. He segued into sitcoms, joining the writing staff of Roseanne, and later creating the comedies Grace Under Fire and Sybil. Moving to Fox in 1995, he co-created Dharma and Greg. He's had success at Warner Brothers and CBS with a couple of shows you may have heard of, such as 2.5 Men, The Big Bang Theory, Mom, Bob Hearts Abishola, Young Sheldon, and Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage. He also pretty much wrote every word of one of my all-time favorite TV comedies, The Kominsky Method. Yes, it's the king of sitcoms himself, Chuck Lorre. I caught up with him via Zoom while he was at the Banff World Television Festival at the start of June. That is where he delivered a keynote address. And, I think I helped him get keyed up for that keynote. So here he is, Television Academy Hall of Famer, Mr. Chuck Lorre. Well, it's good to see you, sir, and I'm glad that you're ensconced in a beautiful place. You having fun?
We are having fun. It's just gorgeous here, as you know.
It's pretty cool.
Where are you now? Where are you physically coming from?
I'm about an hour north of Toronto, a little place called Orangeville, kind of a small town, and so no mountains around here for sure, but it's home. So we're loving it. But you and I, you won't remember this, but I was at Banff 18 years ago, almost to the day, in 2007, when we showed the final episode of The Sopranos. And
we thought we lost the feed.
Right. And the hotel didn't have HBO. They didn't have the movie network. I had a screener. The Canadian network sent me a screener of the final episode, and I hadn't looked at it. I flew to Banff and told the people there, and that's why we saw it that night. And
I didn't know it was a DVD. I thought we were on some kind of HBO feed that went dark.
Right.
Everybody did. Oh, somebody fix it. Everybody thought we lost the feed because no one imagined that was the ending.
No, and I was sitting next to Bill Carter and at the New York Times, and he phoned the Times and said, well, how does it really end? Because this idiot Brio got a screener without an ending. And they said, no, that's how it ends.
That's the ending. Yeah, I remember Bill was there. That was, I might have actually I'd done some kind of Q&A with Bill.
Probably. But do you remember what your initial reaction was to that moment, to that ending?
Yeah, I absolutely thought it was a technical failure. I didn't think it was it was for 1 second did I think that was the dramatic ending of the show.
Yeah, it threw a lot of us, but it was kind of cool to experience that with a room full of TV movers and shakers.
We're still talking about it.
Yeah. Now you're the keynote speaker. You're doing an address at Banff later on today. And do you have a specific agenda? Do you know what you're going to be, your topic is for today?
I do not. I'm just, Mike Schneider is the moderator, and I'm just going to follow his lead.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fun. A lot of questions. Do you feel we're at kind of a pivotal time? Television's always a constant state of revolution, I feel, but it just seems that every year there's another challenge or hurdle. What's your take on TV today?
Well, there's an awful lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, some remarkably wonderful things that are getting made. that are just astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a lot being made. People sometimes complain that there's too much, but my answer to that is I've never once walked into a supermarket and went, "Wait a minute, there's too much food here."
It's a good analogy.
That's not a legitimate complaint.
No.
Too much wonderful stuff, and maybe not all of it's wonderful, but the opportunity to make a show of your dreams has probably never been more accessible than it is now.
For sure.
Whether anybody sees it is another question, but the opportunity to get it made is pretty remarkable right now.
Well, I'm sure you're aware that The Big Bang Theory is probably the most seen TV show ever in Canada. I think 10 straight years at number one.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you had a nickel for every time Bell showed The Big Bang Theory, you could buy Twitter back from Musk. I think it just never ended, and it was fun to watch. When we were talking about the finale of Sopranos, when it came time to do the final episode of Big Bang, did you have that idea in your head for years, or just that season?
No, we found it as we were doing that last season. We had very lengthy discussions about that last episode, and really, it very much was that last episode was a character arc for this Sheldon Cooper. When he wins a Nobel and attributes a great deal of his success to his friends, which was a remarkable thing if you'd followed that character over the years. He's quite self-obsessed, right? And the arc of him coming to love his friends as well as his bride was felt really like a wonderful place to bring the plane in.
Yeah, it was the full arc over the 12 seasons, and it was pretty cool. You nailed it, I thought. I listened to a podcast or two preparing to talk to you, and you talked about how there was 2 pilots made for that series, and in the original was somewhat the same with the 2 central characters, Sheldon and Leonard, but then again, you had a do-over, and you figured it out. And it seems like nowadays shows don't get time to get on their feet like they once did. I mean, if you look historically, it took Cheers a while, and other shows maybe 6-10 episodes. Big Bang, and that's funny. My memory is it was always a hit, but I guess
not true.
Yeah, right.
Not true. No, we debuted. We did about 7 or 8 episodes. Maybe we might have been behind 2.5 Men, and then the Writers Guild went on strike for 3 months, and we really didn't know if we were going to come back, and we certainly didn't know, what the future held. It was a very frightening time, and then when we did come back after the strike was over, I think we shot 8 or 9 more shows in a hurry because we were just desperate to try and, get noticed.
Wow.
And I'm trying to remember if it was that first season that we went to Comic-Con.
Right.
And I remember telling the cast that we shouldn't be disappointed if there's 11 people at the panel at Comic-Con. And there were 4,000 people.
Incredible.
At that panel. And they camped out overnight to get in. I mean, it was an astonishing reception. That was when I think I first started to go, well, okay, something's going on here that is way beyond anyone's hopes and dreams.
It must have been astounding. My memory of the series, I don't know if it was that Christmas episode where Sheldon runs out and gets like 100 flower arrangements to pay Penny back for the bit of Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy's DNA.
Yeah.
With this napkin and a healthy ovum, I could make 100,000 Leonard Nimoys. Yeah, that was a terrific moment.
To me, that's when the series was whole. Like that's sort of when it was complete and on its feet, and there was no turning back. I thought that was a brilliant one.
And we started to discover along the way, and that's what you do if you're lucky enough to stay on television, that Penny in particular was a nurturing and affectionate, almost a matriarchal character for these guys. And she was not a threat to them by any means. She was, if anything, amused by them, occasionally appalled by them. But there was a warmth there that I think meant a lot to just the tone of the series. When she said, "Leonard, look, Sheldon's hugging me." Well, that was a breakthrough. That was a character who couldn't tolerate human touch.
Right.
Couldn't tolerate it. It was anathema, and when he received that napkin that Leonard Nimoy had wiped his mouth with, hugged her, and the hugging was a pivotal moment in the series because it was character growth. It was Sheldon becoming more socialized and capable of expressing gratitude.
Yeah, empathy. It was interesting.
Empathy, yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask too about casting and writing. I mean, and that's a good example with Penny's character, with Kaylee. You probably had an idea for that character, but she completed it. How important is that casting in terms of writing for a sitcom?
It's everything. You can write all the words you want on a page, unless you find a remarkable actor or actress like Kelly Cuoco, who brings it to life and actually adds a great deal more than what's on the page. That first moment when she meets Sheldon and Leonard in the first episode, the second pilot, where he's just overwhelmed at the sight of her, and all they can say to each other is hi, 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 hi. There were no jokes in that scene. It was just there was something magical that happened between Kelly and Johnny, and it spoke to what was going to become a surrogate family in a way. These characters, every week we saw them eating together, like a family used to do.
Yeah.
The Chinese food takeout around the coffee table was, almost reminiscent of, what the family dinner. And in a way, the show, the ensemble becomes a family.
Yeah.
That, if you have enough time, if you're lucky enough to have enough time to develop those relationships.
Yeah, it was very relatable and sweet. We'll be right back with more from Chuck Lorre in just a moment. Did you know that Superman comes from Canada? Well, he was co-created by a Canadian, Joe Shuster. That building he leapt over in a single bound, modeled after the old Toronto Star headquarters, plus that frigid Fortress of Solitude, had to be up in the Northwest Territories, right? Well, here's something else that's absolutely 100% Canadian, Super Channel. That's where you'll find both When Calls the Heart and another period romance, When Hope Calls, both shot in Canada. Super Channel Heart and Home is also where you can watch the new Canadian original, The Movie Star and the Cowboy. Mackenzie Porter stars as an actress who has to saddle up and prove she can play a rancher. All that and so much more, including top imports from around the world, streaming now on 4 different platforms on Super Channel, available via most cable providers across the country. Here he is again, Chuck Lorre. And also want to ask about another show, Bob Hearts Abishola. Just a bit of a story. My wife, Sandra, her mother immigrated from Italy in the 50s to Canada and was in her 90s, and her favorite shows were your shows. She loved Big Bang as well and Two and a Half Men, but she just called it Abishola, and it would come on, and I think she related to it as an immigrant from Italy, and that family and the uncle, and he knew all their names, and it was actually for an older person. The repeating the names was part of the process of memory too. It was everything for her. You must be astonished how borderless television has become. That your shows play all over the world, but speak to people in different countries as well, right?
You don't think about borders and boundaries when you're writing a television show, a comedy, I think in particular. The goal is really very simple, which is laughter. That's the goal. I'm kind of old school. That's the goal of comedy, is laughter. The involuntary response to something that touches you on some level, that you recognize, and there's no thinking involved. There's just laughter. It's immediate, and and while you're doing that, you're also, I thought one of our goals with Abishola was an homage to the extraordinary lengths that immigrants make to get a foothold in this country. These are the hardest working people in the world, and most ambitious, energetic, dynamic, and it's part of the genius of this country is that it's had this, open door for the most part for hundreds of years, and it's kept the country vibrant and alive and dynamic, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but it's part of the greatness of this country. It's why I was giving out hats when we started Abishola with IMAG on the cap.
Really?
Immigrants make America great.
Wow.
That was the swag we were handing out.
Was that before the Red Hats?
It was about happening around the same time.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, no, it wasn't MAGA. It was IMAG. And that was the hope of that show as well, which was to showcase that, she was relentless about her child being, becoming a doctor. Right. She was absolutely could not even imagine in her wildest dreams that he could be anything less. And, one of the joys of doing the show was, he picks his own path ultimately,
Yeah.
He wants to be a dancer on Broadway. I mean, it was, it's the American nightmare for a Nigerian immigrant, right? But it spoke to the freedom of this country to choose your own path.
Do you think, was that a hard show to pitch then, and would it be possible to pitch now?
I don't recall the difficulty of the pitch in particular. I just felt very strongly that there was a story that we could tell that would do honor to immigrants of whatever background, and the real dysfunction in the show, was in Bob's family. That was the crazy family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, great actors on that series. Yeah. You spoke. I listened to a few podcasts of yours, and you talked a bit about your favorite shows growing up. You were really into Star Trek and the Smothers Brothers, and then when they both got canceled in the same year, you kind of were ready to throw in the towel on television.
Yeah, sure.
And you made the reference. You were talking with Tom Scott. You were talking about when guys were marrying genies on television, and then anything you want, master, and he would just go away. That was off-putting to you as well, right?
Well, I think the point of that conversation was those were situations. When you come back from outer space with a genie in a bottle, that's a situation. When you inadvertently marry a witch,
right?
That's a situation. But what happened is, I think, as television matured, with Roseanne is a good starting point, and Cosby and and hopefully what we were doing as well, you're telling family stories, raising children, dealing with in-laws and spouses, and the situation is life. It's no longer, the high concept situation of my mother, the car.
Yeah.
it's my mother doesn't appreciate me. That's not a situation. That's just life.
Right.
And I think that was a natural evolution. And it also goes back and forth too. I mean, CBS has a hit show now with ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
When you live in a house with ghosts, that's a situation.
Yeah.
It's and that's fine. It's great. It's wildly entertaining, and TV can encompass both approaches to comedy. But it's big enough to have wild, crazy, over the top stuff, as well as just a family dynamic, which is what we're trying to do with Georgie and Mandy.
Yeah.
Which is just raising a child, brand new couple living with his in-laws.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to make a life for themselves. That's just life.
You've got a very funny Canadian on there, Will Sasso.
Oh yeah,
it's great to see him on your show, and to me, just an underused talent. So congrats! I love watching him. It's pretty fun to see him there.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, he is pretty good. Right?
Yeah, he's just gold.
Yeah. Just quickly on Smothers Brothers, which was a show. I was young. I was like 12 watching that. And to me, that was transformative. It was generational. It just sort of seemed to speak to me and people a little bit older. Was that your experience with that series?
Well, I was probably 17. So politics of the show meant something to me, And the politics of the show is why it got canceled. It was a successful show. It got canceled because they were touching on some sensitive issues in this country at the time, and I was just outraged. How could you? First of all, they're a comedy duo. And they succeeded at that. They were wildly great at what they did. The timing and the chemistry between the two men was phenomenal. But they also had a political point of view, which was intolerable on television. And it's relevant now.
Yeah.
It's a relevant conversation to be having now, because we're still having that conversation. Are you free to speak your mind?
It seemed like we weren't having that conversation anymore, and now suddenly we are, right?
Yeah.
It's very curious, and even the president of the United States has suggested there should be tariffs on television and film to help support Hollywood, which is people are shooting less there and more in Atlanta and Vancouver and Toronto. But do you think this makes any sense? Can you put tariffs on television production?
I don't quite understand how that would work. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can tell you that for 35 years, I've been working in Burbank. So,
you own a corner, a big chunk of the Warner Brothers lot. Well,
I've been to Warner Brothers since 1999. So 26 years there, and then the MTM lot over on Laurel Canyon there, and I did Darman Gregg on the Fox lot.
Wow. Well, as a member of the Television Critics Association, we've been guests on, Studios 22, 23, 24, 25. They're all named after your shows now. It's been, it's been quite a privilege to experience that, and that must really seem like home for you.
Yeah, mommy and daddy keep changing, but it's home.
Well, there we go. That's just life. Sitcom master storyteller Chuck Lorre returns after this message.
We built the pyramids. Math, science, history. unraveling the mystery that all started with a big bang.
Here on the Mountain of Entertainment, we take crime off the streets and bring it right into your living room. We're throwing the book at boredom with every episode of Matlock, Watson, Elsbeth, and the biggest crime lineup you've ever seen. You have the right to remain entertained.
Stream Paramount Plus from $6.99 a month.
You gonna need backup here?
Paramount Plus.
Time once again to speak with Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, my goodness, it's so great to see you. Now, I turn on Hollywood Suite and it looks totally new, totally different. What is going on?
We've done a little bit of a makeover.
Nice.
Bill. Some of our channels are just adjusting a little bit. We now have 70s plus, 80s and 90s combined, 2000s, and then 2010s plus. So same content, just a different organization.
Okay, well, that makes some sense. And congrats, it looks really cool. What have you got content-wise for us this summer?
You know, we always have lots of great movies, but I'm really excited about the fact that we have a new series this summer called Hell Motel, which is from the creators of Slasher, if you're a fan of that franchise.
Yeah.
This is a new thing from them, but it's a slasher kind of series in terms of the genre. It's about these true crime enthusiasts that go to a famous murder site. As you have it, more murders happen.
And you have one of our favorites on here at Brio TV, the podcast, starring in it, right?
Is that Eric McCormack?
It is, of course. Yes. Done 2 episodes. So love to see him. He's in Hell Motel. Awesome.
He sure is. He's a big star. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the show is starting on Friday the 13th, Friday, June 13th.
Oh, I bet that's not an accident. So smartly programmed. Well done. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations. Hell Motel all month, all summer, I assume, on Hollywood Suite.
Thanks, Bill.
And we're back. Want to ask a bit about the Television Critics Association. It's I've been a member for 40 years, and it's no longer really operating as a tour service where we can go and interview folks because just the economics of television and newspapers and coverage has changed. How important was TV criticism for you? Were there guys you always read that would do reviews of your shows? Did you pick anything up? Did you find it helpful or not?
I've had my fair share of, nice words that have been said about my work and also, hurtful words that have been said about my work,
Do any words like just...
I think if you're going to read the nice ones, and feel good about yourself, then you need to read the other ones as well. But I think that what keeps me from losing my mind over this thing is that's not the goal. The goal is to cause laughter. The goal is to create something with characters that you care about, that their relationships you care about, and the comedy is real. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. And when you get caught up in what people are saying about your show in print or online, then I've missed the point of what it is I'm trying to do. Keep it simple. What I'm trying to do is make the audience laugh. Honestly laugh. Not chuckle, not go, oh my, that was amusing. Laugh.
Yeah,
so the criticism, while it's always nice to get a pat on the head, you also get a kick in the ass. And that's fine. That's the nature of this thing, but it's not the goal.
Well, I can't imagine you got too many kicks in the asses for the...
Oh, boy. Thank you very much, but boy, are you wrong.
Well, let's talk about one show, the Kominsky Method. I mean, my goodness, we've watched that 3 times through from start to finish. It's brilliant. And
Thank you.
the writing, and I remember being on set. There was a TCA event between the first and second season, and we were in the room with you guys on one of the sets, and it was such a privilege to talk to Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin and you about that show. And I often wondered, it just seemed to be another muscle to write that series. It was no studio audience. It wasn't a sitcom. It was a movie, really. And was it much of a left turn for you, or was it just another way to make people laugh?
Well, laughter is still, it's how I'm wired after all these years. It's how I'm wired. But because of the nature of how we shot it, and I also, it was an experiment for me. I wanted to see, I'd been working in a writer's room for so many years. I wanted to see if I could write alone, sitting in a room by myself, which is how you start when you're a writer. When you're getting started, you're in a room by yourself. And, and your instincts of what's good and what's bad and are yours and yours alone. The consensus it does not exist. It's just simply your instincts. And I hadn't had that opportunity for years, many, many years. So I wanted to see if I could do it. And it turned out to be immensely enjoyable to say, I believe in this. I think this is right. Let's shoot it. And also, I was on the set all the time. So sometimes things failed, which they do in comedy. Things you think are just so wonderful aren't. And you have to have the humility to go, oh, hang on, time out. Let's not do take two right away. Let's discuss the words here, because the words may need some help. And that's, that's actually just what happens if you're working in front of an audience for 30 years.
True. Yeah, they tell you.
You come to recognize that, they don't agree. What we thought was so wonderfully funny, those 200 people simply don't agree. And you have to honor that. And after about 30 years of doing it in front of an audience, the audience is kind of in your head. They're there. I can kind of tell when something's not working, because I can hear their silence in a way.
Wow. But you must have known those scenes in Musso and Frank's with, you got those two guys. My God.
Yeah. That was like a dream team, right? To write for those two men.
Yeah. It was wonderful to watch and just really, really fun. The other thing I want to just quickly mention, when Big Bang was starting, I'm sorry to jump around like this, but we met at the Beverly Hilton. There was you were introducing the show, and it was a small room. We weren't even in the hall. And I remember we all were very aware of Sheldon Galecki, but not Jim Parsons. I remember you saying individually to us, look, there's a guy in this show I want you to really pay attention to. He's a game changer. And you were so right. When did you know that you had somebody special for that role?
Well, when he auditioned for the part, he actually at one point even read for the part of Leonard. But something remarkable was happening when he read the Sheldon sides. And when he walked out of the room, I was astonished because it was nothing like I expected. And I couldn't quite wrap my head around what I'd just seen. It was brilliantly funny. And he had physical qualities of the character. It wasn't just words. True. He embodied the character. His whole body became Sheldon. And I remember asking Nicky Valco, my casting director of many, many years, to ask him to come back in the room and do it again. I wanted to see if he could do it again. And he did it. He did it perfectly. And then the next moment I remember is the scene in that first episode, where he's explaining to Penny, Callie Cuoco, why he sits where he sits. A long speech about why he sits in that spot, the air and the viewing of the parallax of watching the TV monitor and the breeze from the window. And he had it figured out, in depth as to why he sits where he sits. And the audience went crazy. the audience was absolutely crazy. And it's a moment I remember very dearly because Jimmy Burrows, the legendary Jimmy Burrows, directed the pilot. Mm-hmm. And he was standing near me and he looked at me and he smiled. And I smiled back because we both knew something remarkable was happening. It wasn't on the page. It was elevated from the page because of this man's performance.
It sounds like when, John and Paul were playing for the first time with Ringo, mm-hmm. and they heard him and they looked at each other and thought, okay, here we are.
Now we're a band.
Yeah, right.
Now we're a band. Yeah, no, it was every once in a while, you get to see, in my job, I've gotten to see mastery. And that was mastery amongst the whole cast. But, as it's very clearly, Jim was a game changer.
Yeah. And I interviewed him in a season or two in, talked to him on the phone, and he was such a different fellow than that character. He was very warm and descriptive and gregarious. And I was really, wow, he's a really good actor.
Yes. Acting. How about that? Acting.
It threw me. Well, congrats on all your great shows. I just wanted to give you one challenge before we wrap up. If you were asked to create, and with Big Bang, you had a Canadian theme song. You had the Barenaked Ladies, of course.
Sure.
And is that true that they didn't trust you were going to actually use them, and they weren't quite ready to sign off on it?
Ed Robertson, the leader of the band and the songwriter, from what he's told me over the years, is we just talked on the phone. I said, "Here's what we're looking for." The song should be about from the Big Bang, the beginning of the universe, to our characters eating Chinese food on the couch in 20 seconds, and everything that follows from the Big Bang to the. And I said, and that's the idea for the song.
Wow.
And what he told me later was he did not want to do it. He thought this was ridiculous. And his wife made him do it.
Oh, wow.
and then the next thing was he sent a guitar vocal demo, just him on acoustic guitar. It was a very somewhat melancholy version of the song.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I wanted that to be the theme. And he said, no, it has to be the band. I'm not a solo act. We're the Barenaked Ladies. It has to be the band. And I tried to talk him out of it. I failed. And then he went into the studio with the whole band and did the version that became, the theme of the show for 12 years. And we used his guitar vocal demo in the finale.
Oh, nice. That's what
very last
year.
episode.
That's
as you're
cool.
fading out on them eating dinner after the Nobel scenes and whatnot.
Wow.
As they're eating dinner and we pull back on them just going about their lives, we fade up Ed doing that guitar vocal. And it was beautiful. It was almost as if we had a plan.
I just assumed you had him record that to be a different ending, but that's the original from the pitch.
He re-recorded it from the original one that he sent me 12 years earlier, but it was the same. It was a beautiful, beautiful, poignant performance that he brought us, and it was emotionally exactly how we needed to end the show.
You're a guitarist. Can you play the theme from the Big Bang Theory?
I can.
You're too busy.
Okay.
What I was getting to though was if you were asked to make the perfect Canadian sitcom or just a Canadian, just a Canadian, I'll give you a title, Elbows Up, just what would be a show you might conceive of just for putting you on the spot, but just for Canada?
Young Neil Young.
Oh yeah. Okay. That's hilarious.
How's that?
That's it. You did it. You nailed it.
All right.
That's perfect. Listen, break a leg there and all your endeavors with all the series. I don't know if there's anything you're working on you want to mention beyond the shows you have on the air.
Well, Leanne Morgan's coming up at the end of July on Netflix.
Fantastic.
Starring Leanne Morgan, just a brilliant, brilliant stand-up comedian out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And he's something else, I think. And that's one to look forward to. Yeah, and season 2 of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage should land us back on CBS, I guess, in September.
Congrats. That's fantastic. Quite a run. My God. I remember driving by Television City, the beginning of season 2 of Big Bang, and seeing that giant poster right on the face of the building. That must have been a moment for you as well. You knew.
We all went out and took a look and took pictures. It's a silly thing, but it was deeply meaningful.
Sure.
When you get that billboard up, it makes you feel like maybe we're going to stick around for a while.
It seems to have worked out.
It seems to have, yes.
Listen, I very much appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy, but I always wanted to congratulate you and tell you how much I love Kominsky and all your shows and what they mean to a lot of viewers. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bill. It was fun talking to you.
Thanks. Take care. Okay, man, that was fun. Thanks again to Chuck Lorre. And when does this man sleep? He is set to launch yet another sitcom. It's called Leanne, and it stars the very funny stand-up comedian Leanne Morgan. All 16 episodes drop July 31st on Netflix. I'm indebted to some folks at Warner Brothers, Mark Klein, and as well the wonderful PR team in Banff of Pam Wilson-Quinn and Casey Kelly of Inc. Media for making this interview happen. My thanks as always to Phil Hong, who always does the work of 2.5 Men in pulling together these podcast episodes. Thank you, Phil. The music you heard is all from BJ Del Conte and Paul Boudreau of the Crispy Critters, as well as the late, great Stephen Dudley. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.